Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hello everybody, Kieran aka The Laird here, and I've got a hardware stroke system review and overview for you. I'm going to take a break from doing the documentaries this week, as popular as they've been, for several reasons. One, because a lot of people have been asking for some more hardware reviews, and I did promise on my recent Q&A that I was going to do some, and I mentioned some of the ones that I had planned. But also, as anyone who follows me on social media will know, I've been in and out of hospital recently with quite a few health issues, and making the documentary videos is incredibly time consuming, and I just haven't really had that kind of time in the last couple of weeks to kind of sit down and write another one. So, but I promise I will have one back next week, and it will be a beauty. So something to look forward to for next week. But here we go. As you can see, the system we're going to be looking at today is the Atari 130XE, part of the Atari 8-bit range of computers. I've previously reviewed the Atari XE game system that was the very last model, actually launched in the range in 1987. I'll stick a link to that there in the top corner right now, so if you want to watch my XE game system review before this, you can. I have also done a review of the most popular model in the Atari 8-bit range, the 800XL. So again, I'll pop a link up for that in the top corner if you'd like to watch my review of the 800XL as well. So there we go. I've covered a couple of models in this range before, but a lot of people have actually asked me if I would do the 130 and asked me if I had one. So I figured that that wouldn't be a bad idea as well. Now, the XE models were launched in 1985 alongside the 16-bit Atari ST, and as you can see straight away, the design of the 130XE is incredibly similar to that of the Atari ST. So they've got a very similar look to them, and obviously that was intentional because Atari wanted to create, you know, this kind of whole range with similar looks. I mean, it's got the same obviously diagonal keys there, the same color, same type of keyboard, all very similar. Although my one, as you'll see, unfortunately, is a little yellowed on the keys. The rest of it's not too bad. It's got a bit of a crack on the case here. But yeah, I picked this up in a job lot of other things. I can't remember what else was in there, but it was an absolute ton of different Atari 8-bit stuff. And this was one of the things in there. I think there was actually two computers in there, and this was one of them. But anyway, I digress. So what's the difference? There was two of these. There was the 65XE, which the XE game system was based on. 65XE meaning 64K of memory. So 64K of memory, obviously double that, you've got 128K of memory. So that's what this one has, the 130XE. So 65 plus 65, again, not easy. Pretty easy maths to work out. The 130XE has 128K of memory, and it is the only Atari 8-bit to have 128K of memory. And there wasn't another one released that had more memory, although it's actually been revealed recently that Atari were planning to launch and actually a further upgrade at one point called the Super XE. A lot of people for many years assumed that the Super XE, after having seen it on documents and stuff, the Super XE was going to be an ST games console. And it turns out that the Super XE wasn't. It was actually an enhanced Atari 8-bit with some extra features, I suppose, kind of like you had with the Commodore 128 and the Sam Coupe, which was kind of like a Super Spectrum. And also actually the CPC Plus range, that's probably the closest comparison, where they added things like extra colours and hardware sprites and things like that. That's what the Super XE would have apparently done. Now, okay, so I've mentioned 128K of memory, and that really is the only difference. Apart from that, it's got all the same chipset as the 65XE. You know, you've got the same capabilities in terms of colours and graphics and sound and everything. All the hardware, apart from the memory, is identical. And we'll have a little look around the computer as well. So, at the back here, we have, this is our peripheral. It's labelled, or SIO port, so we can connect. It actually has got little icons there. You can select printer, tape deck, modem, and disk drive to that socket. That, believe it or not, there is the cartridge socket. Rather awkward place to have it, and we'll get onto that in a minute. Next to that, it's got one labelled expansion bus for adding other things. I'm not actually sure what goes into the expansion bus. I'm sure someone can tell me, but I'm not really sure what the usage of expansion bus is. Monitor, self-explanatory. RF socket, obviously connection to TV, and that is the power supply socket there, and an on-off switch. What have we got on the sides? That side, absolutely nothing. And on this side, as you probably already guessed, are two standard joystick ports, Atari style joystick ports. So you can connect two joysticks up to it. Now let's go back to that cartridge port for a minute, because I will show you this. So I had a cartridge and I put it down somewhere. Okay, I found that cartridge. So we have here Bug Hunt, one of the XE cartridges, and you'll notice I've actually put some games behind. When Atari obviously launched the XE range, they did launch a range of XE specific games in these lovely big blue boxes. They're a bit bigger than the original Atari 8-bit cartridge boxes, a little bit larger in size, but I love the design of them. I think they're really cool, especially when you've got loads of them on the shelf together. I've got quite a lot of them. I think I've got about 30 odd. So they look great when you've got them all on the shelf together anyway. And I love that vibrant blue. I think it's great. So the cartridges, they go in here. Going back to so you can see, you can see how awkward that is. I mean, even I'm sitting right in front of it, and I've had to kind of lift it up to make sure it's in properly. That obviously is in properly now. You can see how flush it is to the keyboard. I keep knocking my boxes down. But you can imagine, if you are using the computer this way, which you imagine you would, if you're typing, then sticking cartridges in, I mean, how awkward is that? You can't just really do it without kind of looking. I'm struggling to get it in the right place. That was an incredibly bad idea. I'm not sure why they thought moving the cartridge to the back was a great idea. I think what would have been quite cool is if they'd actually had a diagonal cartridge slot up here, much like they did with the XE game system. So you could kind of, the cartridge or would go in maybe something like that up there. That would have been good, I think, or even just moved it here and had it in the middle like the 800 XL, where it just plugs into the centre there. You could have easily brought that down a bit and created a cartridge slot in the middle. But I think it would have looked cool to have kept the aesthetics to have a diagonal one up the top there. So Yes, that was my big bugbear with the XE computers, and why I would never use one as my kind of general purpose machine, because the cartridge slots are so awkward to get to, a real pain in the arse. I think because the XE 65 and 130XEs were mainly kind of destined for Europe, I suppose. That was the prime market for these was Europe. I think they figured that in Europe we didn't really use cartridges with computers. We mainly used tapes and disk drives, and indeed in the UK certainly, and probably other countries, especially Eastern Europe, I would have thought the XEs did come with a tape player as well, which I will actually show you. Okay, so here is the XC12 tape recorder that came bundled with the XE 65XE and the 130XE, and as you can see, there's the cable that plugs into that SIO port on the back. And so you couldn't just use a normal cassette recorder like you could with a Spectrum, you know, with the mic and ear leads. You had to have one of these specific Atari cassette recorders. They're good quality. They've got a tape counter and they've got a light that tells you when it's saving and things like that. But they were painfully slow. The Atari 8-bit range was not designed with tape loading in mind. It was very much designed to load discs and cartridges. Tapes were kind of an afterthought, and the tape loading on the Atari is chronic. It's not only the slowest of any 8-bit machine that I know of, but it's also very error prone. So you quite often find that it will take several attempts to even load a game in, and it's a very, very, very painful experience. So you won't find many people using a cassette recorder with their Atari 8-bits these days, especially not when there are so many better solutions. There was a version of the Atari disk drive that was XF something, I can't think now, XF15 or something like that, that was designed specifically for using with the XEs, and obviously it was in the same colours and stuff. I don't have one of those, unfortunately, but as you can see, I've popped a little image of one there in the corner so you can see it, so you can see what they look like. They look pretty smart when you actually see them next to these machines. I've only got one of the big old 1050s, which look lovely next to the 800XL, but they look a bit weird when you bundle them with the XEs because of the colours and the aesthetics and stuff. They look a bit strange. And one big difference actually with the disk drive for the XE range was that it was double-sided, and I believe they also gave an option of both. I think you could get one that was for 5 1/4 inch discs, and I think that you could get one that was for 3.5 inch discs as well. So although they weren't really used on the 8-bit, but because obviously the ST was using 3.5 inch discs, so they obviously thought that was a good idea as well. I believe the 3.5 inch disc drives are really, really rare and hard to get hold of.
Live ball. Alive, alive. Alive, alive.
So there was other peripherals obviously as well. You had your standard Atari joysticks that could be used with it. One of these came with it. Although this one is actually from my XE game system. It was actually black joysticks that came with the XE computers. But these are much nicer because they match. I've got a couple of these, but they're really hard to get hold of because they only came with the XE game system. So I'm not sure why, because they really should have put these with the XE computers. They should have put these with the ST as well because they would have matched nice. I'm not sure why they chose to make this bit black, but it looks great. I love the base still. So I'm not sure why they didn't bundle them with all models, as I said before. Or even possibly they could have stuck a joypad with it, like with the 7800, but that's another matter altogether. So, yes. So let's go back to the games for a moment. So I've got loads of these games, and I'll grab a couple more. But one thing I'll show you about the games is here. So look at another one. So there is some games that were released, new games that were released specifically for the XEs. They usually work. They actually all work on the 800XL as well. A lot of them require 64K of memory though, so they won't work on the older machines. They won't work on the 400, the 800, or if you've got a 16K the 600XL, they won't work. So a lot of them do require 64K of memory. You do actually see, they do actually say an XL computer systems down there. So Crime Buster is one such game. It was a new release, and this is a light gun game, and it shows you on the back actually that it requires the light gun. I think there was a bundle with the XE computers that came with the light gun as well, like with the XEGS console, the ZEGS as I call it. So you could get one with a light gun. You could buy the light gun separately as well. But yeah, that's a light gun game, so it always shows you on the back. And this was important actually, showing you what they use, because obviously if you had the XE game system, if you'd have bought the basic package, you wouldn't have had a keyboard. So you actually do need to know if some of the games need keys. And there's Rescue on Fractalus, which is an example of one of the games that was re-released for the XE range. Quite often they were games that were converted from discs. So you see there it shows it in his keyboard and joystick. So if you'd have bought the basic package with the XEGS and not got the keyboard with it, they only got with the deluxe, you would be stuck buying this game. But there's some, there's some like that. I mean, there's others. It's a real mix because, for example, Thunder Fox that I've put at the back there was originally only released by Atari UK on tape, but Atari decided it was a really good game, and so they also released it a little bit later on cartridge, so in the US as well. So to take advantage of the whole XE range. There's also other stuff that was ported from other Atari systems. So for like Desert Falcon and Dark Chambers were originally Atari 7800 games that they ported to the XE. See, Ace of Ace is another conversion from disc. So yes, there's a really, really wide range of different titles that were sort of kind of different rebrands for the XE range. And here's another curiosity actually. I want to point this one out because Battlezone, the XE version is different to the original version. Now, Atari was supposed to release a version of Battlezone for the Atari 8-bits computers back in the day that would have been identical to the Atari 5200 version, but they never released it for whatever strange reason. And well, I say whatever strange reason, it's speculated that they didn't release several games like Battlezone Berserk and trying to think what the others were. Battlezone Berserk, there was a few more, but Mario Brothers, that was another one, because the 5200 was selling so badly they didn't want to divert sales away from it, and so they decided to release some games just exclusively, so to speak, for the 5200, hoping people would buy the 5200 to play them, and of course they didn't. But those games were later obviously found and leaked and all sorts, and you can now play them on the Atari 8-bits quite easily. People have made reproduction carts and all sorts. But Battlezone is slightly different because for some reason Atari just chose to totally reprogram the game for the 64K machine, so they changed it to vector graphics. You'll have seen the little video stuck in the corner of the original version, and this version uses proper vector graphics, and it runs a bit slow, but it looks bloody fantastic. So it's strange that there's a few games where they did that. Mario Brothers, I actually already mentioned, they did that again with that. And that was quite an interesting story because apparently they wanted to re-release Mario Brothers, they couldn't find the source code for the Atari 8-bit version, because they'd probably thrown it out when they were throwing lots of stuff out when the Tremors took over Atari, and so they chose to get it was sculptured software to completely reprogram the game for them. Seems like a bit of a waste of time, but as it turned out, the XE version was actually a lot better than the original version Atari did back in the day, so not all bad. Talking about games a bit further, you probably are already wondering if there was any games that took advantage of the 128k of memory, because I've only mentioned 64k stuff so far. So in this range, the XE branded range, there were no games released that used 128k of memory, or indeed were enhanced in any way for 128k of memory, because obviously a good example for that would be the Spectrum, where they made games that would play, you know, for example, they would have music when they were played on 128k machines, or they wouldn't have multi-loads or something like that. Nothing of the sort really for the Atari 8-bit. There was some third-party stuff that took advantage of the 128k of memory, and there are few games that only use 128k, but very little indeed, because I think this was probably one of the worst selling models of the machine. I don't think that many people owned the 130 models, and so there was a very small audience to cater for. So I just don't think the companies just don't think bothered with making 128k games. Interestingly, there is a prototype of Commando that was never released, and the original prototype of that was found would only work on 128k machines, but they've since made it work on 64k machines as well by some clever hacking and stuff. So that isn't an issue. But yeah, there have been a few homebrews that actually take advantage of the 128k of memory. You'll see that throughout this video I have been showing clips of games, and all the games that I've shown clips of are ones that have some sort of extra features when played on a 130XE. And the couple that you will have seen are Bosconian, which is a recent homebrew. The main difference with that is the sound. It adds loads of speech in when you play it on 128k machines. And another is Stunt Car Racer. I think that one just needs the extra memory, to be honest, because it's a pretty advanced game. And obviously they ported it over from the Commodore 64 as well. So I think they probably could have found a way of optimizing it to play from cartridge on an Atari 8-bit, but because they released it as a free download, yeah, it requires a 128k machine to play, which is a shame, because I wish I could use that on my XE game system, although I could mod my XE game system with extra memory, but I'm not one for modding machines. And that actually is another issue I could expand on a bit, that you can modify pretty much all the Atari 8-bits actually to add in extra memory. I believe you can actually go up to 320k of memory pretty easily, and I think there are even mods that take it up to 1 megabyte, but I think they're a lot more complicated to put in and manage. So Yeah, so in summary, really, there isn't a great deal of reasons to own a 130XE. It's kind of a nice thing to have a 128K machine. But yeah, in this day and age, there's even, even back then there wasn't really much of an advantage. But in this day and age, especially not, because you can mod any of the existing machines if you want to have more memory, and because so few games and programs take advantage of the extra memory anyway, they're kind of, it's a bit of a redundant machine, sadly. I think the idea was nice. I could see what Atari were trying to do, kind of introducing a brand new model that was completely different to the existing ones in the range, and would kind of provide a kind of premium top of the range model. But in reality, the 130XE offered nothing really that the other machines didn't have, and I kind of think you were probably just paying a bit more for a badge without really getting much out of it, sadly. So that's my summary of the 130XE. I think, on a practical sense, if you're going to buy an Atari 8-bit machine, and I think everybody should own one because it's such a fantastic computer. And as much as I love the Spectrum, and I grew up with it, it was my first computer. In hindsight, I would have loved to have had an Atari 8-bit instead, and I nearly did, because my dad wanted to get one of these because the deals on the XEs were so good in Toys R Us. He saw one running and saw how superior it was to the Spectrum, and said, why don't you get one of these instead? But I was adamant I wanted a Spectrum because that's what all my friends had. But yeah, in hindsight, I do wish I'd had an Atari 8-bit, because they're such bloody amazing machines with so many impressive games. And yeah, I think if you are going to buy one these days and you want to go and get a machine and you want to know which is the best one to pick up, then I would go for an 800XL, or get the 600XL and up the memory on it. Because the 800XL is definitely the most practical. You've got the cartridge slot in the middle and yada yada yada. I've covered it in detail in my other reviews, so go and look at that again if you are interested. And I hope you've enjoyed my review and overview of the 130XE, and I will see you all again for another video very soon, and I thank you for watching. Bye bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more just like it, then please consider visiting my Patreon and making a pledge. You'll even get access to a host of exclusive content there too. I've been the Retro Laird. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.